All right, so this is going to be lesson 7 in our unit. This is going to be the last lesson, so please pay attention. Make sure you have all your notes completed because you're going to be getting ready for our test next week. Okay, so start with the warm-up. We're going to find the equation of the exponential function represented by the table. Okay, so remember, this is just, we're using the form y equals a times b to the x, where, where a is our y-intercept, and b is going to be our common ratio. Okay, so as we're looking at this, as I go from this number right here, this 0 point, whenever we are looking for the y-intercept, that's just when x is equal to 0. So we can just say that our a is going to be 0.1, right? Because that's going to be the height, right? That's going to be our y-intercept. And as we're going forward in each step, I'm going from point 1 to point 3, then point 3 to point 9, and point 9 to 2.7. What you're doing is you're multiplying by 3 at every step of the way. So my common ratio is going to be 3. So if I just want to write the equation, we'd have y equals 0.1 times 3 to the x. So the whole point of this lesson is trying to get us to start looking at graphing exponential functions, right? We looked at our parent function in our form right here. This is generally what our equation is going to look like. We have y equals a times b to the x. You're used to that in solving it algebraically. Again, you already know the parts of it. We know that a is going to be our y-intercepts. Typically, you're looking for when x equals 0. And b is going to be your common ratio. So how much we multiply or divide by every single time. Now there's a couple key features when we're talking about graphing exponential functions, right? So we have two different types. We have our growth. So basically our graph is going to look like we're continually growing. Or we have our decay, right? So as I'm going left to right, I am getting closer and closer to 0. Notice how we never actually cross the x-intercept. There's going to be an asymptote there. We don't really talk about that in Math 1, but that's just an idea that going forward. So whenever you see your common ratio is bigger than 1, not equal to 1, but bigger than 1, we're going to have a graph that looks something like this. We're increasing. Whenever our common ratio is going to be between 0 and 1, we're going to be decaying, right? So it can't be 0, it can't be 1, but it can be anywhere in between. It could be 1/2, could be 1/3, could be 1/20th. Okay, so that's our general what we're looking for when we're graphing. All right, for today's lesson, we don't have any delta math practice. I wasn't a big fan of how the delta math practice was looking, but I do want you to take a look at these CUDA problems that I've made for you. I'm going to do four of the problems, and I want you to complete the rest to get you ready for the test that we're going to be taking next week. Okay, so we have, again, we're just looking at the equation. We have our y-intercept. So I can start by marking my y-intercept here. And I know from that point, I could be, my common ratio is going to be 3. So I'm going to be increasing by 3. I can make a table when we're doing this. That's going to really help us out. So let's go ahead and do that right now. Okay, and I would recommend we have our x, f of x, and we're going to do 0, 1, 2. These numbers are going to slightly change depending on what's happening, okay? So we know that my y-intercept is going to be at 2. Right, because that's just coming from the equation. But now our common ratio is going to help us out, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to multiply by 3. So we're going to get 6. We can multiply by 3. And this is going to be 6 times 3 is going to be 18. And anything bigger than that's not going to fit on my scale. Notice how we stop at 20 up here. So I'm going to go ahead and stop here. We can also go backwards, right? I can, instead of multiplying by 3, to go back one spot, I'm just going to reverse that, divide by 3, so we get 2/3. And again, divide that by 3, you would get 2/9. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and start plotting these points. We already have 0, 2, 1, 6 would be right here. And then 2, 18 would be right here. Then we have negative 1 and 2/3 would be somewhere right here. And we're going to keep going like this. Doesn't have to be perfect, but I do want you to get pretty close, okay? So the general, our shape would look something like this. Okay? All right, that's number 1. I'm going to skip number 2. You can do number 2. I'm going to show you an example where we have a decay problem, right? This is a growth problem. So we scroll down to problem 3. Again, my starting point is 2. So if we make our table here, I have -2, -1, 0, 1, and 2. My starting point is 2. As I am increasing, as I'm going up, I'm just dividing by 2. So we get 1 and 1/2, right? If I go multiply by 1/2, and we are multiplying by 1/2 here. If I'm going backwards, I'm just dividing by 2. When we divide by 1/2, that's like saying multiplying by 2, right? So if I do 2 divided by 1/2, this would turn into, remember, we flip and multiply. So we get 4. So 4 would go here. And then 4 times, same thing, just continuing the pattern, would be 8. So go and plot those points. We have 0, 2, 1, 1, -1, 4, -2, 8. We can do more than this, right? So the next number would be -16. We can write, you can just see it from the graph, and go ahead and sketch our graph now. So there is your decay problem. The second type of problem you're going to see in our notes is where I give you a graph and you have to tell me the equation, right? So again, we're just looking for a couple things. We're looking for what our A is, our y-intercepts, and our B, which is going to be our common ratio. And then we can just plug it into our equation like so, okay? So obviously my y-intercept, or my starting point, is pretty easy to find. We can just write the points 3, because that point in our table would be 0, 3. And now we're just looking for points that are easy to read. So I can use this point here, I can use this point here, I can use, that one's kind of, everything to the left of the y-axis is kind of hard to read. So I'm just going to go ahead and take a look at these points. So we have at the point 1, my height is 6, right? So when I'm at 1, my height is 6. When I am at 2, my height is 12. So if I did a quick table, just using those points that I know from my graph, all right, so as I'm increasing, I am multiplying by 2. So my common ratio would be 2. So my graph overall is going to look something like this, where we do 3 times 2 to the x. Okay, that's number 7. If you're going to flip over to, let's do number 9. That's going to be the last problem I do with you. Again, we're just looking for our y-intercept and our common ratio. Okay, so I would recommend using a table if you need to, or you can look at the points. Okay, so my y-intercept is the point 0, 3. So when we're writing our equation, we have y equals 3 times, I don't know what my common ratio is. We got to figure that part out. Now I'm looking for easy points, right? There's nothing, I'm looking to the right side. I don't really see anything that's easy to read, because we have like, that could be 1.5. That could be 3/4, but I just don't know for sure. So I'm going to hold off on using those. I'm going to go to the left now. I'm going to look over here. Hey, I have a nice easy point I can read here. I have a nice easy point that I can read here. So let's just use those points. So this is the points. -1, 6. And this would be -2, 12. So I'm going to go ahead and erase these points to make it help us fit our table. So we have -1, 6, -2, 12. All right, so as I am increasing, remember you do from left to right. So as I'm going from 12 to 6, I am dividing by 2. And as I go from 6 to 3, I'm again dividing by 2. If I were to continue this pattern on, I would have 3/2 or 1.5, which is generally where we are right here. So my common ratio is going to be 3/2, or it's going to be divided by 2. And whenever we have divided by 2, we write this as 1/2. Okay? All right, and that is our last example for the notes. If you have any questions, please feel free to message me. We'll be doing a review next week and getting you ready for the test. Okay, see you later.